In the heart of Benin City, inside a small compound surrounded by mango trees, stood the Omoreje household, a home where the Bible was quoted more than laughter, and silence often screamed louder than words. Adesuwa was the first daughter of Elder and Deaconess Omoreje, both pillars in their local church. To the world, their family looked perfect. Children always wear dress in Sunday attire, voices raised in hymns, and Bibles tucked under their arms. But behind the closed wooden doors, life was ruled by fear, not love. Edomoroje believed discipline was the only proof of holiness. Spare the rod, spoil the child, he would thunder. His wife, though quieter, echoed his rigidity. To them, being a child of God meant being spotless, blameless, above reproach. Mistakes were not corrected with tenderness, they were punished with shame. Adesuwa, a bright-eyed girl of 16, grew up hiding her tears. She had learned very early that opening up her heart was dangerous. Once, when she admitted to feeling lonely at school, her father scolded her. Loneliness? That is the devil whispering. Go and pray. Another time, she tried telling her mother that she felt unsafe walking home alone. Her mother dismissed her sharply. You must cover yourself with the blood of Jesus. Fear shows your faith is weak. So Adesuwa learned silence. She smiled when expected, sang boldly in church, and bowed her head when rebuked. But inside, a storm brewed. She carried questions she dare not ask, pains she dare not voice, and fears she could not share. It was this silence that led her to tragedy. One Friday evening, her choir master, Brother Simeon, called her for rehearsal at the church hall. She was the youngest in the choir, and her parents, trusting the sanctity of the church, allowed her to go without question. But when she arrived, the hall was empty. Brother Simeon smiled at her, his voice calm yet unsettling. Don't worry, the others are running late, he said, locking the door behind her. That night, Adesuwa's innocence was stolen in a place she thought was holy. Her cries were muffled, her resistance silenced, and when it was over, she walked home numb, her body trembling, her spirit broken. She wanted to tell her mother, but how could she? She wanted to scream at her father, but she knew his words already. You tempted the man. You should have resisted. You've brought shame to us. So she said nothing. She carried her secret like a coffin in her chest. Weeks later, her body began to change, and the truth she feared most became clear. She was pregnant. In the Omoreje household, fornication was a curse, a shame that could stain a family name forever. And now Adesuwa, the quiet, obedient daughter, was carrying the very evidence of what her parents preached against every Sunday. Hair was about to break loose. In every African home, secret did not stay hidden for long. The whispers of neighbors move faster than the wind, and when a daughter falls, the shame does not sit on her head alone. It spreads like fire to the whole family. It was Adesuwa's mother who noticed first, the way her daughter's school uniform clucked too tightly, the sudden glow of her cheeks, the heaviness of her steps. At first, she prayed it was her imagination. But when a market woman leaned close one morning and hissed, Deaconess, your daughter is carrying a sin under her wrapper, the truth could no longer be ignored. That night, the sitting room of the Omoreje household became a courtroom. The Omoreje Bible lay open on the table, but his voice thundered louder than scripture. Adesuwa, he barked, his eyes piercing like fire. Is it true? Are you with a child? Adesuwa trembled when she stood. Her lips parted, but no words came. She wanted to scream the truth, that she had been taken advantage of, that she had never chosen this path. But the weight of her father's stare crushed her courage. She imagined his voice accusing her. You tempted the man. You are the disgrace. So she kept silent. Her silence was taken as confession. Edomoreje palm struck her cheek, sending her crashing to the floor. Shameful girl under my roof. You have defied this house. You are no longer my daughter. Pack your things before sunrise. Her mother wept quietly, torn between compassion and fear of her husband's wrath. But she did not defend her child. She only murmured prayers as though piety could wash away the blood in her daughter's vein. That night, Adesuwa lay on the cold cement floor, staring into the darkness. The house that had raised her with hymns and prayers now rejected her like a curse. She thought of telling the truth, but she could already see it. The disbelief, the scorn, the way her pains would be twisted into blame. So she swallowed her story and carried her shame like a burden chained to her back. By dawn, she was gone. A small bag slung over her shoulder, her eyes swollen with tears. Her siblings watched from the windows, confused, too young to understand. Her mother turned away, unable to meet her gaze, and her father stood firm, his arms folded, as if expelling her had restored his honor. The street became her new home. For weeks, Adesuwa sold sachet water and gala in traffic, chasing after moving cars for few naira. At night, she slept under bridges, her body cold, her spirit bruised. Hunger gnawed at her belly. But worse was the emptiness, the knowledge that her own parents no longer claimed her. It was on one of those mornings, weak and weary, that a strange hand reached out. A middle-aged nurse named Madame Clara saw her fainting outside a chemist shop. She rushed to her side, lifted her up gently, and asked, "My daughter, where are your people?" Through broken sobs, Adesuwa shared her story. Clara listened with pity in her eyes and whispered words sweeter than honey. "Don't cry. You are safe now. Come with me. I will take care of you until you deliver." To Adesuwa, it sounded like salvation, but she didn't know she was walking into another trap, one hidden behind a nurse smile. They say sorrow has no sound, but the heart that carries it beats differently forever. When Adesuwa went into labor, it was in Madame Clara's small clinic, a place that smelled of bleach and old secrets. Hours of pain tore through her body, her cries filling the walls, until exhaustion swallowed her. At last, she felt the release of life leaving her womb, and then silence. Darkness dragged her under. When she woke, her arms were empty, her body was weak, but her spirit searched for the sound of a cry, the warmth of a small fingers. She turned to the nurse beside her bed. "Where? Where is my baby?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The nurse avoided her eyes, adjusting the sheet as though fabric mattered more than truth. "I am sorry, Adesuwa," she said softly. "The boy did not survive. He gave up before morning." The word struck her chest like a hammer. Adesuwa froze, unable to breathe. Tears spilled freely as she clutched her belly, now hollow, yet still arching with the memory of loss. "My son?" Her voice broke into pieces. "God, why? Why me? After all I've been through?" she cried. Madame Clara stood at the corner, her face clawed in pity, but her eyes hiding the shadow of betrayal. For while Adesuwa wept for a child she believed gone, Clara had already exchanged the boy for money in a quiet deal with a wealthy couple who is desperate for a child. Adesuwa was too broken to question, too young to suspect. She simply folded into herself, crying until her throat burned. Depression wrapped around her like a second skin. When she finally gathered the courage to return to Benin, she carried nothing but her sorrow. She hoped her parents might pity her grief, that her father might relent, that her mother might open her arms. Her mother did. At the sight of her broken daughter, she wept bitterly. She held Adesuwa's hands and whispered, "Let me beg your father. He cannot turn away a grieving child." But Edemoreje's heart was stone. When Adesuwa stood before him, hollow and trembling, he raised his hand as if her presence defied his air. "You again?" he thundered. "Did I not cast you out? Have you returned to bury us further in shame? Leave! There is no space for you in this house." His wife fell to her knees, pleading, "Please, she has lost her child. She has nothing left. Let her stay if only for a short while." But his voice was iron. "If she enters this house again, this marriage ends tonight. Woman, choose between me and that girl." And so Adesuwa was turned away, even in her deepest pain. She sat by the gate until dawn, her tears soaking the soil. She could hear her mother's muffled sob from inside, but no door opened for her. By morning, she rose with a shaking legs, alone, rejected, empty. She walked into the street once more, never knowing that somewhere her son was alive, growing up in the arms of strangers, carrying her blood but not her name. The world thought her child was gone. Adesuwa thought her child was gone. But destiny has a way of hiding truth until the appointed time. The streets of Benin became Adesuwa's new school of survival. Each morning she woke to the sound of downful buses honking, hawkers screaming prices, and children crying from hungers. She tied a wrapper tighter around her waist and stepped out to sell sachet water by the roadside. She was barely 18, yet her eyes carried the heaviness of a woman who had already seen too much. Passerby would sometimes recognize her. "Isn't that the King's Oko's daughter?" they would whisper, shaking their heads. To them, she was the shame of a once respected Christian home. To Adesuwa, she was just a girl fighting to breathe in a world that gave her no space. At night, she cried silently into her thin pillow. Her arms longed for the weight of her baby, the one she was told had died. She would imagine his tiny fingers curling around hers. She would whisper into the darkness, "My son, forgive me. Mama loves you." Her heart broke afresh every night. It was during one of those weary days that Madame Eunice appeared. She was a woman of influence, dressed in rich Ankara wrappers, her gold earrings glittering under the hot sun. She stopped by the roadside where Adesuwa balanced her water tray. "My dear, you're too fine for this kind of suffering," the woman said, her voice smooth as oil. "Do you want to die here in Benin, hawking under the sun? Come with me to Abuja. I'll give you work, a roof over your head, and food in your stomach. You will send money home one day, and your parents will beg for your forgiveness." Adesuwa's heart trembled. She remembered her father's cold words, "You will never step into my house again." She remembered her mother's tears, and the haunting emptiness in her arms where her baby should have been. Perhaps this was God opening another door for her, she thought. That night, Adesuwa packed her few belongings into a nylon bag. She followed Madame Eunice onto a night bus heading north. The road was long, the windows rattling as the tired bus speed through villages and forests. Adesuwa looked out of the dark night and whispered a prayer. "Lord, let this be the beginning of my healing." But Abuja was not what she expected. The moment they arrived, the promise began to fade. The roof was a crowded one-room apartment packed with other girls. The work was menial job, cooking, and errands for Madame Eunice, who grew harsher by the day. Yet Adesuwa endured. She told herself, "If I can just survive, maybe one day I will rise." What she didn't know was that fate had already planted her lost son somewhere in that same city, growing up under another name, another roof, unaware that his true mother cried herself to sleep each night just miles away. And life, cruel yet cunning, was weaving a story where their paths would one day cross in the most shocking of ways. Abuja glittered in Adesuwa's eyes like a city of promise. But behind the glow was a darkness she did not yet understand. At first, her life in Madame Eunice's care seemed like a second chance. She had food to eat, clothes to wear, and even a small allowance in her hand. She thought she had finally escaped the shame of Benin. But soon, she began to notice things. Strange men visiting the house late at night, girls dressed in expensive clothes, laughing too loudly, carrying bags that cost more than a year's wages for a maid. She would hear their whispers one night and you will never laugh again. One evening, Madame Eunice called her into the living room. The woman's perfume filled the air, heavy and suffocating. She looked Adesuwa over like a trader inspecting fresh goods. "My dear," Eunice said softly, "you're too beautiful to waste scrubbing floors. Look at those girls you see with me. Do you think they suffer like you? They send money home. They wear gold. They eat well. And you're wasting away. Do you want to remain a slave forever?" Adesuwa's chest tightened. "Mama, I just want to work and live a decent life." Eunice chuckled, a sound that carried both pity and mockery. "Decent life in this city? Decent life does not feed you. Abuja respects only money. And money does not come slow. If you want to rise, you must learn the fast way." That night, Adesuwa could not sleep. Her mind wrestled with fear and temptation. Poverty had broken her, rejection had scared her, and loneliness had left her empty. Was this her only way to climb out of the pit life had thrown her into? The next week, Madame Eunice tested her resolve. She introduced her to a man in suit, promising it was only dinner, only conversation. But Adesuwa quickly realized this was not about food or talk. It was about buying her youth, her body, her innocence. She wept when she returned to the room that night, clutching her wrapper tightly as if to shield her dignity. But Eunice's voice echoed, "Money does not come slow." And so gradually, the trap tightened. Adesuwa became one of the women she had once looked at with confusion. She dressed in fine clothes, went out at night, returned with words of cash. To the world, she was now shining. To herself, she was drowning. Deep down, she longed for her lost son, the boy she believed had died. His absence haunted her like a ghost. Sometimes, when men stared at her with desire, she would whisper silently, "My child, forgive me. Mama loves you, and I did not choose this life." But life had already carved her path into the dangerous street of quick wealth. Every step she took was leading her closer to a future she could not yet see. The moment where her past, her pain, and her child would collide. The day Alhaji Musa entered Adesuwa's life, everything seems to change. He was not like the restless men who passed through Madam Eunice's house. He was older, calm, and carried himself with the quiet authority of a man who owned both wealth and power. His interest in Adesuwa was instant, and unlike the others, he was not satisfied with just fleeting moments. He wanted to possess her completely. Within weeks, Alhaji had rented a spacious duplex for her in the heart of Abuja. Marble floors, chandeliers, imported couches. Things Adesuwa had only seen in magazines became her daily reality. For the first time, she was free from Madam Eunice's suffocating grip. She no longer shared space with other guests waiting for their turn to be summoned. She had her own home, her own key, her own space. Adesuwa smiled when she saw the house, but deep inside a question lingered. Was this freedom or another prison? Soon her name began to circulate among Abuja elites. She was no longer the hungry girl chasing cars and beneath traffic. She was the young beauty in designer gowns, always in the company of powerful men, politicians, business tycoons, expatriates. Her phone never stopped ringing. At dinners, she laughed. At vacations abroad, she posed for pictures. Online, she appeared to be living the dream. But when the doors closed and the makeup washed away, she would sit on her king-size bed, staring at the ceiling, asking herself, who am I? The money was plenty, yet the emptiness remained. She told herself she could stop whenever she wanted, but the truth was harsher. Her body had become her battlefield, and her trauma had turned into a habit she could not quit.
Push.
Each time she tried to stay away, loneliness crept in. Each time she promised herself this would be the last, another offer came, too tempting to resist. Her addiction was not to the men, but to the escape, the illusion that she was valued, that someone wanted her, that she was not the abandoned daughter of a father who caused her existence. Her past had carved an open wound, and every glittering night in Abuja was only a band-aid that she never healed. Meanwhile, somewhere in the same city, a young man named Daniel, the son she thought she lost, was also climbing a dangerous ladder of reckless living, raised with every luxury money could buy, but without the root of discipline or love. Their wells were drawing closer, like two rivers destined to meet. Adesuwa did not know it yet, but the palace she lived in was built on sand, and soon a storm was coming that would shake everything she thought she had secured. At 37, Adesuwa's reflection in the mirror was a lie that even she sometimes believed. Her skin glowed, smooth and unwrinkled. Her figure was firm and youthful. To the outside world, she looked no older than 27. Men whispered in admiration when she walked into a room. Women envied her grace and poise. Social media painted her as the definition of success, a thriving online hair business, luxury trips abroad, and a lifestyle most people only dreamt of. But when the light dimmed and the phone went silent, Adesuwa faced a truth only she could see. Her heart was hollow, her nights restless. Wealth wrapped her like silk, but loneliness pierced deeper than hunger ever did. Every evening, after returning from glamorous party or dinners with high-profile men, she would sit at her vanity, remove her jewelry one by one, and whisper into the silence, "My child, if only you had lived, maybe I would have been different." She still believed the nurse story that her only baby had died after birth. That single lie had shaped her entire destiny. Sometimes she imagined what life would have been like if she had held him in her arms, raised him with her own hands, and given him all the love her parents never gave her. But instead, she gave her body to strangers. At first, it was survival. Then it became habit. Now, it was her cage. No matter how much money she made, no matter how high she climbed, she could not let go. The addiction clung to her, not in loss but in emptiness. She had learned to mask her pain with laughter, to bury her scars under silk gowns. One evening, after returning from a flight from Dubai, she sat in her plush living room sipping wine as the city light twinkled beyond the glass walls. Friends would have envied her. The marble floors, imported chandeliers, the painting that cost more than cars. Yet Adesuwa felt like a prisoner inside her own palace. Her phone buzzed with a message from a senator who had been chasing her for months. She signed, placed the phone face down and leaned back. At that moment, her thought drifted to her parents. Did her mother ever think of her? Did her father still curse her name? She remembered her mother's tears, her father's harsh words. "She's a disgrace to this family." Those words had cut deeper than the violation that ruined her childhood. They still echoed whenever she was alone. She rose, walked to her balcony, and stared into the Abuja night. Cars streamed like fireflies across the highway below. Her soul whispered a prayer that she hadn't said in years. God, is this all my life would ever be? Far away in the same city, another life was spiraling. Daniel, the boy she thought dead, was a young man now, spoiled by wealth, restless and reckless. He was living the same emptiness that haunted his mother. Their paths had not yet crossed, but destiny was quietly weaving its thread. Adesuwa did not know it yet, but the mask she wore was about to be ripped away. The life she thought she built for herself was preparing to collide with a life she never knew she had. Daniel never knew hunger. He never knew the sting of sleeping under a bridge, nor the shame of being cast out by one's own blood. From birth, he had been surrounded by luxury. His adoptive father, a business mogul with estates across Abuja and Lagos, gave him everything money could buy. Private schools, foreign vacations, the latest cars, even before he was old enough to drive. Daniel lived like a prince in a kingdom of endless wealth. Yet, beneath the surface, he was as empty as the boy Adesuwa once cradled in her dreams. At 20, Daniel was handsome, charismatic and restless. He had a smile that melted women's hearts and a wallet that opened any door. But he had no anchor, no discipline, no sense of purpose. His adoptive mother, though kind, was distant. His father was too busy selling contracts and shaking hands in high offices to notice what his son had become. And so Daniel grew wide. By 18, he was already known in Abuja's nightlife. The boy who could buy out an entire club in one night, who always flew his friends to Cape Town or London for weekend getaways. He lived for thrills, for women, for anything that distracted him from the quiet arch he could never name. There were nights after the laughter died down and the music stopped, when Daniel would lie awake in his penthouse suite, staring at the ceiling. He felt a void, something he could never explain. It was as if a piece of him had been stolen long before he learned how to speak. He sometimes wondered, why do I feel alone, even when the world is at my feet? One evening, after yet another reckless party, his adoptive mother tried to confront him. Daniel, she said, her voice firm, is this the life you want to live? Do you think money will last forever? Daniel laughed, his eyes tired but defiant. Mom, money is the only thing that lasts. Everything else, love, loyalty, family, it's all a lie. Those words pierced her heart, but she said nothing more. For how could she tell him the truth? That he was not her flesh and blood, that he was a boy brought into their lives through a deal made in the shadows of a clinic many years ago. Daniel continued to spiral, his words shielding him from consequences. By 21, he had already been with more women than he could remember, flown many flights than his age in years, and spent more money than some families would ever see in a lifetime. But the emptiness grew. It was one of his luxury vacations abroad, this time in Spain, that fate stirred. He was restless, tired of the same faces, the same shallow pleasures. His friends suggested something new, something different, someone who could keep him company in a way no one else had. He agreed, not knowing that the woman he was about to meet was the very one who had given him life, the mother he thought never existed. Destiny was preparing its cruel twist, a mother and a son, strangers by circumstance, about to be drawn in a dangerous closeness neither could foresee. Hello fam, it's your girl AC Folktales. Thank you for watching and do well to subscribe. Stay tuned for more interesting folktale stories. Bye.